So, tonight is the first night of Hanukkah, right? It's the first night of Hanukkah. And there's a lot to discuss on what the significance of the holiday is and what Hanukkah is supposed to teach us and what Hanukkah is supposed to teach us. The first pasuk in the Torah teaches us that there's going to be 4 stages that the Jewish people have to go through before they reach Geulah. There's 4 stages. There's the stage of Babylonia. Then there's the stage of Mitzrayim. There's the stage of Bavel. There's the stage of Paras, which is Persia, which is the challenge that we had in the time of Mordekhai and Esther. After that came the Greeks with the Yevanim, and after that, the final stage was Edom, Esav. That was the final stage, which we are still in now. Now, the word choshech al pnei tehom. So when it says in the first verses of the Torah, Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim v'et haaretz ve'haaretz hayta tohu va'avoh, and there was choshech al pnei tehom. There was darkness all over Tehom. Choshech is the Yevanim. Choshech is the time, and if you notice, this is the darkest period of the year, where the sun sets very, very early, and we're in the time of darkness. So I want to speak about tonight, now, and this is very good that we're doing this the first night of Hanukkah, because it's going to give us a perspective on the next 8 nights, what exactly is going to be our job on Hanukkah, what we are meant to learn from Hanukkah, and what we are meant to do for these 8 days. So let's start with the following. What did the Yevanim want to do to us on Hanukkah? What was their gezerot? What was their decrees that they decreed against us on Hanukkah? So, in truth, in the halachic literature, there's 13 different gezerot that they tried to do. People think, they only tried to stop us from learning Torah. We're going to see that there was much more than that. There was really 13 different gezerot that they tried to do. There was the korbanot, that they nullified us from bringing sacrifice. What did they care if we brought sacrifices or not? They made a gzera against the korbanot. Then they made a gzera against the ner tamid, which is the eternal light in the Beit HaMikdash. Then they fought against Sukkot, believe it or not. Sukkot. I don't know why. Sukkot. Then there was the famous 3 decrees: Shabbat, Rosh Chodesh, and Brit Milah. They also fought against the ketubah, a woman's ketubah. Interesting. They didn't let us dress like Jews. They broke the boundaries of the Beit HaMikdash. They didn't let us learn Torah in public. Okay? And they made us write on the ox, Kitvu lachem al keren ashur. They made us write, En lachem chelek be'elokei Yisrael. You don't have a portion in the God of Israel. So how many is that already? Let's count. Korban, the sacrifices. They didn't let us have the ner tamid. That means the light that was always in the Beit HaMikdash. They made us extinguish. Sukkot, Shabbat, Rosh Chodesh, Brit Milah. Writing on Keren Ashor. The clothing. Learning Torah in public. Breaking all our boundaries. That's 10. Ketubah is 11. There was another thing that they did, that they made us write the Torah in Greek. I didn't see that. But the tefillin I didn't see. That I didn't see. They didn't let us write the Torah in Greek. And there was one more gezerah that I'm not that I don't have with me right now. But they did 13 gezerot. So that means 13 different breaches they made. Now, why did they pick these? They were very smart people. This is what I want to discuss with you tonight. Why did they pick these? And what exactly happened during Hanukkah? We think Hanukkah at the time, we're just about the menorah. We're going to see that there's a very big depth over here. First of all, we do celebrate the reinstituting of the menorah. And why the menorah? It was such a peripheral miracle. It was just a miracle on the side. They happened to find Ner, and they were able to light it. The big miracle was that they won the war. But the main focus of Hanukkah, if you say one thing on Hanukkah, what does Hanukkah represent? Or you think it's jelly donuts, or you think the menorah. Why the menorah? So I want to discuss with you the following. These are beautiful, beautiful insights that I saw that will really give us a perspective in the time when Hanukkah was taking place and what it's about. When did Hanukkah take place? Hanukkah took place after Purim, right? People think Hanukkah was before because it happens before the year, but it's not true. Hanukkah happened after Purim. There was the Gemara in Masechet Megillah says that in Masechet Megillah Daf Yud Aleph Amud Aleph it says the following: Tana lo ma'asti b'mekazdim she'emati lehem Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, v'Azariah velo ga'alti b'yemei Yevanim protect you Shimon HaTzadik and the Chashmonaim and Mattatya Kohen Gadol. When was Shimon HaTzadik born? If you look at the historical calendar, Shimon HaTzadik was at least a good 100 years before the miracle of Hanukkah. Shimon HaTzadik was way earlier. What is Shimon HaTzadik? Who does Shimon HaTzadik represent? Who was Shimon HaTzadik? Shimon HaTzadik came in the period right after the last prophets. There was a transition in the Jewish people. Until then, we were always dependent upon prophecies to give us direction in life. And then when that finished, we started being guided by the Anshe Knesset HaGedolah. The Anshe Knesset HaGedolah were the body of sages led by Ezra Sofer, and they really recorded the Sidur, and they recorded the Jewish law as we know it, and that came right after the periods of the prophets. That came right after the periods of the prophets. Now these Anshe Knesset HaGedolah, they came right after the time of prophecy, and they did a very important thing. They killed the Yetzer Hara of Avodah Zarah. They killed the Yetzer Hara of idol worship. Right? There used to be a Yetzer Hara, a great Yetzer Hara of idol worship that if we would have it nowadays, we'd be running after. We think nowadays, oh, what's the big deal? I see these Buddhists, these Buddha things all the time. I don't have any need to bow down to these things. What do I care? We don't understand that in those days, the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination for the idol worship was so strong that if we would have been there's no way. We have to understand that there was prophets that lived a double life. They used to go to the Avodah Zarah, and then during the day they would go to prophecy school. That was the way it was. That they knew that they could go to the Avodah Zarah and ask them for something. Imagine a guy was depressed, he goes to Avodah Zarah will give it to him. It's kind of like drugs. It was very addictive. So they saw it was too hard for the Jewish people. So they nullified the Yetzer Hara of Avodah Zarah. They nullified. Instead, what came instead? There started to be concepts of philosophies that are not consistent with Torah. That means of different heresies that started taking place, different philosophies that started infiltrating, and that's what we'd have to fight against. Because you can't just eliminate the Yetzer Hara. I once noticed that around the time of when they nullified the Yetzer Hara was also the time when the Christianity, what they attribute their father of Christianity, started evolving. And somebody told me that it's written in the Arizal that once they took away this whole big Yitzhar Avodah Zarah, they couldn't just leave a vacuum. Instead, they had to create a power that could be like diluted, that people are not going to have that Yitzhar. So they put that into things like Christianity. At least that's where the power of Avodah Zarah, because where's all that energy going to go? So it went towards Christianity, but it also went towards different heretic ideas. So Shimon HaTzadik was one of the beginning stages where there wasn't any more prophecy, but there was the Hachamim, there was the sages, and the Torah to lead us the way. Now, right after that, there started to become a sect called the Tzdukim. You ever heard of the Tzdukim? The Tzdukim were in the time of the Gemara, of the Mishnah, and the Bet HaMikdash, that they didn't believe in the oral law. They only said what's written in the Torah law. In other words, if it's going to be, if it says on Shabbat, lo tiva'aru esh, you can't have fire, they took it literal. We have the Torah that Moshe Rabbeinu taught us, that it means that you can't start a fire on Shabbat. You have a fire beforehand, you're allowed to continue it. But they said no, that you have to sit in the dark the whole Shabbat. You have to sit in the dark the whole Shabbat. It's interesting. I was interviewing recently because I sit on a conversion bet din, and there was a couple that came in for conversion, and they said that they wanted to keep Shabbat, so they thought Shabbat meant that you can't have any lights on, so they would sit in the dark the whole Shabbat. It's obviously not true. On the contrary, if a person eats. If a person eats only cold on Shabbat, we suspect him of being a tzduki. Why are you eating only cold on Shabbat? Don't you know that you're allowed to have heat on Shabbat? But they were of the opinion that tzdukim, that no, literal. When it says an eye for an eye, that means literally somebody takes out your eye, you have to take out his eye. We have the Torah that teaches us not that way. They said that you can't. It says in the Torah that Hashem is your healer. They don't go to doctors at all. Very, very literal. Now, I looked up. I made some research on what else these tzdukim found out were about, and I found some very interesting things. They don't believe in afterlife. They don't believe in hashgacha pratit, that Hashem leads all our ways. They don't believe in reward and punishment, basically in the world to come. Very, very dry. I would call it very literal. Now these the Sadducees. Now they were very, very strong in the time of the Bet HaMikdash. On a political front, they had so much political power that many of the Kohen Gadols were Tzdukim. They were Tzdukim. And they would prevent people from practicing Torah the way it was supposed to be practiced. And that's why there was an amazing amount of Kohen Gadol that died every year. Because, if you walk into the Kodesh Kodashim, in the big Kodesh Kodashim, and you don't have the right thoughts, they had to put a string on you to pull you out. So a lot of these Tzdukim were heretics. So nowadays, we don't have them nowadays. It's a sect that only believed in the written law, and they weren't, and a lot of them weren't honest people, and they only got to their position of Kohen Gadol through bribing the Roman government. And every single year they would have to replace the Kohen Gadol because they would die in the Kodesh Kodashim. And still they kept on going at it. There was once a story that all of the Jews would gather to the Bet HaMikdash, thousands and thousands and thousands of Jews, and they would watch very carefully for the Kohen Gadol, because it says that on Sukkot you have to do the water libation, and you have to put it inside a certain area where the wine goes, and it went very, very deep inside. And the Tzdukim didn't believe in that. The Tzdukim believed that you have to pour the water not on the libations, but just on the Bet HaMikdash. So everyone was watching if he's a real Tzduki or not. So what he would do is sometimes he would fake it, and instead of putting it in the hole, he would put it right next to him over here. They caught him one time, and they saw him doing that, and they called out Sduki. They all took their etrog, because the etrog was it's the symbol of the oral also. I once heard an explanation, because it represents that we don't know what an etrog is. It says to take a beautiful fruit. They don't know what a beautiful fruit. They're just Moshe Rabbeinu thought it's etrog. They all took their etrog, and they pelted the guy. They killed him. They killed that Kohen Gadol. So they had a lot of tzeddukim in the time of the Bet HaMikdash. It was a very challenging time. When did the tzeddukim start? They were students of Antignos, not Antignos. They were in the same time of Antignos Yisucho, which was right around. It was right by the time of Hanuka. So the tzeddukim were very, very strong. And then you had the Yevanim. The Yevanim were an interesting group of people, the Greeks. They came along with their philosophy that everything comes from Yefet. Yefet Elohim liyefet. Just external beauty and nothing deeper. Nothing deeper than that. They were let's get an insight on what exactly the Yevanim wanted to do to us. They made one gezerah that's puzzling. They said the following: translate the Torah into Yevanit. Translate the Torah into Greek. Why? What do we care? The day that the Torah was translated into Greek, it was on the 9th of Tevet. It was a national tragedy. As a matter of fact, some rabbis say that nowadays a person should fast not only on the 10th day of Tevet, on the 9th day of Tevet also, which is not so far away, like 3 weeks away, 2 weeks away. Why? Like, who cares? Who cares that we translated the Torah into Greek? Why was that such a big deal? Everything shook when we translated the Torah into Greek. So I'm going to give the answer that the Hatam Sofer gives. And once we give that answer, we're going to understand a deeper insight on all of those 13, well, we said 12, different challenges that the Greeks did against us. Number one, they translated the Torah into Greek. So what? What did they want from there? I want to ask you another question. Why is it that we make a bar mitzvah boy go through the effort of reading the Torah without any dots, any nikudot, without any ends of pasuk? You ever thought about that? It's so hard. We are not allowed to write any dots, any nikudot in the Torah. You have to know how to read it on your own. Why do we make it so hard? Why so difficult?
So nobody else can read it?
On the contrary, we want everyone to read it. No, but even Jews have a hard time. Non-Jews, they don't know Hebrew. The answer is like this. Torah's letters are infinitely deep and have an amazing amount of depth and explanation into them.
It doesn't have white spaces and also the black writing. Both have meaning.
They also have meaning. And there's the crowns that have the meaning. You realize there are crowns in the Sefer Torah. Rabbi Akiva used to know the meaning of even those crowns. Even those crowns. I say the following story. You're not going to believe me, but I have a book that I could show you. This story is written in the 1700s from the Gaon from Vilna. The Gaon from Vilna lived 200 years. One day, Pesach morning, he woke up, he was all depressed. They asked him, "Why are you depressed, Rabbi?" He says he dreamt of different explanations on a pasuk in the Torah, on a verse in the Torah, and he doesn't remember them. And he knows why he doesn't remember them. Because you're not supposed to think about Torah until you make the blessings on the Torah. Really, it's only if you say them, you're allowed to think before. But he was of the opinion, even you can think of those blessings. So he thought about that before he said Birkat Torah. So he was so sad and that he lost all these explanations. And he thinks it was a punishment because he thought Torah beforehand. Imagine that was our worst thing. So the next day, they saw him happy again. They said, "What happened?" He said, "I was able to retrieve back most of the explanations." They said, "How many explanations?" He says, "You should know. It was on the verse like this. There's a verse in the Torah, Ve'alu ze ba'negev. It means they went up to the Negev. That's all that's written over there. How many explanations can you have on that pasuk? 2,260 explanations on that one pasuk. And in one of those explanations, he was able to know the function of each limb in our body. Each limb in our body, he was able to know what mitzvah correlates to which limb. 2,260. That's one pasuk in the Torah. Because the letters have so much light and depth and meaning to them that you translate it into English, you are making it elementary. You are making it simple. You are taking away its depth. You're just saying, on the outside, it's beautiful. So that's what the Yevanim were about. Make the Torah just nice cultural stories. It's nice. It's very palatable. You could say this. Take away all the depth. What do you do when you take away all the depth? It's not the chokhmah. It's not the wisdom that leads our life anymore. All it is it's a nice thing. And that's what they were after. The Yevanim weren't after killing us. That the Persians tried. The Greeks didn't try that. They didn't try to kill us at all. What they tried to do is take away our Torah. They tried to make our Torah. They tried to reform us. They tried to tell us, you don't have to follow the Torah in what the Torah means. Now, what does the Torah mean? Once we were taken away from prophecy, now we were going to get into a stage of chokhmah, of wisdom. Wisdom would have to lead our lives. Wisdom leading our lives meant that Torah is not just a subject, it's a wisdom that has to teach us the way of life. It's depth. It's not just face value, just a nice subject. It has depth and it's light. That's why Hanuka is about lighting the darkness. It's light. So let's look at these 13 gezerot. The common denominator between these 13 attacks that they had against us was one thing. They wanted to take away our connection to Hashem. All of these 13 things show that the Torah is a wisdom. It's light that guides us in our connection to Hashem. Let's look at it. A korban. It's a connector between us and Hashem. It's a way that we communicate. It's a prayer to Hashem. The Ner Tamid is also that Hashem had the Ner Tamid to say, as long as that's lit, I love you and I have a connection with you. Sukkot. What's the Chag Sukkot? We go in there to have a connection with Hashem, that we are in His wings. Shabbat. It's a brit. Rosh Chodesh. It's also that it's a relationship between us and Hashem. He gave us Rosh Chodesh. Brit Milah. It's once again a covenant between us and Hashem. They made us right. En lachem chelek be'elokisei. You don't have a portion in God. What do they want from us? Break your connection with God. Learn Torah. There's nothing to do with God. Don't dress different because if you don't dress different. Dress like us. That way you're just like everyone else, and you don't have a connection. You don't have special. That you don't have a special connection to Hashem. You're like everyone else. And they broke our boundaries because that's what kept on protecting us. They didn't make us learn Torah b'tzibur because that's when we would Torah in public, because that's when we would fortify our connection to Hashem. They made us translate the Torah into Greek, like we mentioned, because they made that superficial. All of this leads to the same, and the ketubah, obviously, which makes a simple act of marriage, it makes it sanctified. It shows that there's more to just living life externally. A man likes a woman, they get married. There's kiddushin, it's kadosh, there's holiness, it's a union, and it's together with partners with Hashem. They wanted to destroy all of that. They wanted to destroy our Jewish marriage. Oh, and that was the 13th thing was nidah. What did they want from nidah? Because once again, that shows purity. And they wanted to take any connection of purity, anything to do with holiness, just make the Torah simple, nice stories, and that's it. I want to tell you something. There's one of the leading heads of yeshivas in America wrote an article recently, and he said like this: there are three main crises facing the Torah world today. There's three main crises. There's the tuition crisis. There's the shidduch crisis. And then there is we'll call it the left-leaning crisis. The tuition crisis. That many parents don't want to have large families because they don't know how they would send their kids to Jewish schools. Like Rabbi Skobach spoke on Friday night over here. He said somebody wanted to convert their family. He says, okay, fine. You're going to send your kids. Where do you live? Arkansas. How many kids do you have? Well, I have 5 kids. You know how much it costs Jewish school? So he told them between 10 and 20,000 a kid. He says, how much do you make a year? 40,000. It's not simple. You have to just think everything through, how you're going to make it. And a lot of people are afraid to send their kids to Jewish school because of that. It's a very big problem in the Jewish community. But that's not our discussion. And then there's the shidduch crisis. Many, many, many people cannot find their shidduch. And that's also a big crisis. And number 3 is that people sway after all different types of ideas of leaving the world of Torah for other ideas and ideologies that there are. But he says that's not the real crisis. That's not the real. There's one major crisis that overcomes all these crises. That really takes the cake, as we would call it. And that's the crisis of, you have a lot of Jews that go to shul and that they attend synagogue, minyan, but they don't have a connection to Hashem. They don't have a connection to Hashem. And that's a crisis that's worse than all of them. And don't think it's only in communities that are not so observant. Even in the most observant community, people could be wearing black hats or this hat or that hat. A lot of people come to synagogue and they're just there socially. They don't have and they're not there for a connection with Hashem. And that's the worst crisis that there is. Because if somebody lives his whole life and puts so many efforts and so many hours of being a Torah Jew, and they're lacking the most fundamental element, which is a connection to Hashem, so what's it all worth? What does a connection to Hashem mean? What does a connection to Hashem mean? So I want to tell you like this. David HaMelech instituted that a person should say 100 brachot a day. It's not so simple. A woman who doesn't pray 3 times a day, it's not so simple how she's going to get those 100 brachot. Some poskim say a woman is not obligated in 100 brachot. Some say no, she should try as much as she can. But the concept behind 100 brachot, 100 brachot, was every time a connection to Hashem. Every time you say, thank you Hashem, brachot Hashem. Prayer, tefillah, is the key to connection between us and Hashem. That's the key. Thank goodness the Yevanim didn't find out about that to nullify that, because that would have been the first thing. Tefillah, prayer, is our connection to Hashem. And we have to put in our efforts in praying, even if we don't have time for saying a lot of time tefillah. But a little with kavanah, a little with proper thought, is better than a lot with no thought whatsoever. Tov me'at b'kavanah, me'harbe shelo b'kavanah. It's very important in tefillah to concentrate on even doing a little bit, but properly. Because that builds our connection with Hashem. No matter what they're singing or whatever else, you just put yourself into a state of mind. Right now, I'm connecting to Hashem. Because this is what the Yevanim wanted to do now. This is what Hanukkah represents. Hanukkah is not about the fight that we were strong. It's not about that they tried to kill us physically. There's nothing to do with that. Hanukkah was that they wanted to destroy our connection between us and Hashem. I want to tell you a story. In 1944, there was a camp in Bergen-Belsen in the Holocaust. And there was a person over there. He was a respected Rav. And he told all of his bunkmates, we're going to celebrate Hanukkah this year. I thought he's crazy. He's losing his mind. There was no way. They didn't hardly get bread. They're going to get oil and wicks and candles and a mat. Where are they going to get all of that? He says, I don't care. We're going to celebrate Hanukkah. They wrote on the wall every single day, when Hanukkah is coming, little by little, until it was very close to Hanukkah, and he once took a walk. He took a walk, and he saw a bump. He saw a bump where he was working. Took a walk where he was working, saw a bump. He uncovered that bump, and he found a flask of oil, wicks, and 8 cups. He couldn't believe it. They lit Hanukkah that year in Bergen-Belsen. He then moved to America after the war. He was able to be free from the war. He moved to America. And he had an audience with the Satmar Rebbe, the Rebbe from Satmar, the big tzaddik. The Rebbe from Satmar also went through the Holocaust. And he told him, I was once in Bergen-Belsen also, and I bribed one of those guards to be able to let me bury somewhere a Hanukkah menorah so I could use it during Hanukkah time. But those Rishayim didn't let me use it, and I wasn't able to use it. He says, no, don't worry. We found it, and I lit it. And the Rebbe heard that. He was very content. So Hashem keeps on performing Hanukkah miracles when we just have to look out for it. Yeah. Yeah.
I just told it to one of the women from Israel.
Yeah.
Last year I went to visit one of my friends.
Hashem is saying like this, you want to have a connection with me? You could have it. Just believe me. Just believe me that I am there with you. And I am going to open up the doors of light if you just look for me. Now, I wanted to say the following. The Yevanim were about destroying our connection with Hashem. Now we're found in a different period in history, where we have other people who are destroying our connection with humanity by saying that we are the right truth. They could go into a school like they did today and murder 141 people, 132 kids. Like, what type of sick people is this? Like, you have to understand. What type of sick people have an ideology of killing innocent children and going into synagogues and butchering people and going into cafes and hostage people? This is the final galut that we're in. You see, every single year the Ramchal says we have Hanukkah is another time where we rejuvenate the fight that we had between the Yevanim and the ideological fight and what they wanted to do to us. Every single year we go through that again. So this part of the year we have to fight against all the heresies and all the bad ideologies that people had against us. And what did they have against us? Taking away our connection to Hashem. So during this part of the year, we have to concentrate on our connection to Hashem. And during our connection to Hashem, we have to remember that those who claim that they think that they have an ideology that we're acting in the name of Hashem, that's crooked. It was always that way. I mentioned a couple of weeks ago that it was always the way of the Yishmaelim, that they would say, well, I'll take anything that's true and twist it. Their concept of relationships between man and woman is twisted. Their concepts of relationships between... They just said that Al-Qaeda announced in Great Britain about a month ago that for 3 days they're going to fast. They're going to have a fast because unfortunately they see that there's not enough virgins in the sky for them. There's only 50 instead of 72. So by not working for 3 days, it's going to increase that. So they have ridiculous concepts, and they say we are the proper and they pray. That's the danger. Listen, their prayer is it could work if a person really prays to Hashem. It could work, but it's a crooked way. That's not the way that Hashem wanted the world. Hashem didn't want crookedness. And for people to murder innocent children. Just in Har Nof now, there's 24 orphans. 24 orphans. Why? Because 2 people took an axe and whatever and guns, and they said, you know what, that's what we're going to do. And in the cafe, and now in Pakistan. That's all they want to do. All they want to do is destroy and wreak havoc in the world. We have to affirm that our truth is the right truth of Torah, of connection to Hashem, and our wisdom is the wisdom of Torah. And that's why the one lesson that I think that I want everyone to take out from here is connection to Hashem. We have to connect to Hashem. That's the main thing. If we connect to Hashem, that's what Hashem wants from us. And Bezrat Hashem, with that, I think that if we internalize that lesson during these 8 days of Hanukkah, we really accomplished a lot. And we accomplished what Hashem really wants from us. Okay? Very nice. Chazaku Baruch.